What a tough loss for Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers. They just lost to the Houston Texans 32-12. And unfortunately for the Los Angeles Chargers, there is no next week. When you lose in the playoffs, you go home. But what a season it was for the Los Angeles Chargers. Many people had this team going out there and missing the NFL playoffs. I had them winning this game personally against the Texans, but shout out to the Houston Texans for going out there and taking care of business. I do believe long term, the Los Angeles Chargers are going to be a dangerous team, not only in their division, but in the AFC. And before I get into the game against the Houston Texans, because I will have to touch on this matchup, I want to talk about what has happened throughout the entire season with Coach Harbaugh, Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, and Jesse Mentor, the defensive coordinator. You saw Coach Harbaugh go out there and make a lot of statements off the field. When they went out there and they moved on from Mike Williams. Mike Williams was making a lot of money. He was coming off a torn ACL injury, and he suffered with injuries in the past. Still was a key wide receiver for many years with the Chargers, but he's not the same player that he once was. And Coach Harbaugh, he was worried about the cap hit. So they moved on from Mike Williams. He went up to Keenan Allen, asked him to take a pay cut. Keenan Allen shook his head and said, no, I'm not taking the pay cut. I just came off the best season of my career. And they moved on from Keenan Allen. So you knew that the wide receiving position was going to be a major issue moving forward. They selected Ladd McConkey, and you had Quentin Johnston from last year. Now, Quentin Johnston was selected in the first round in last year's draft class. I said at the time they picked up Quentin Johnston, I'm going to say it again. Why not select Zay Flowers? I understand that it's a different general manager. You're dealing with different things. But even at that point in time, you have two big body wide receivers. Why would you go out there and pick up Quentin Johnston, who was a very productive player for TCU? He did not have those many drops at TCU, and his rookie season was a complete nightmare. He lost them that game against the Green Bay Packers. This season, he was better, but he still doesn't look like a first-round pick. He's not a true number one wide receiver. At times, he looks like a true number two. Yes, I think that he'll be a better fit as a number 3 wide receiver. In this year's free agency class, if you have the money, go out there and try to bring in T. Higgins. Go out there in the first round, bring in yet another wide receiver to help out Justin Herbert and the Chargers long term. Ladd McConkey is phenomenal. He had a great rookie season. Ladd McConkey, I don't have a bad thing to say about him. Sure, he missed some games this season, but when he was fully healthy, he was their best wide receiving target by far. And when you look at Quentin Johnston, 711 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. He averaged 13 yards a catch. You'll say, hey, those are not bad numbers. But Quentin Johnston was selected in the first round. This kid is really supposed to be out there, and he's supposed to look like a top 10 wide receiver because of the body type that he has. I'm not saying give up on Quentin Johnston. He has a place in this league. But the drops and the inconsistent route running, it hurt the team. And it was a couple times this year that you look at Quentin Johnston against the Baltimore Ravens and you just shake your head because when he has one drop, you know that's pretty much it for the day. His confidence takes a hit. And I like him as a player. He had a very good bounce back year. But I'm just being honest here. He's not ready to be a true number 1 just yet. Ladd McConkey, he's already there. But you bring in another guy, you'll have that top wide receiver with Ladd McConkey, with Quentin Johnston. You should be in a better situation long-term with your offense. And Greg Roman, in the past, he's caught a lot of flack because of the lack of creativity in the pass game with Lamar Jackson. I want all those people to realize something. Even though Lamar Jackson has been a superstar, with and without Greg Roman, he did coach him up to his first MVP. And Greg Roman has been to a Super Bowl before with Coach Harbaugh. He's a brilliant offensive mind. He may not have the same passing concepts like a Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator with the Detroit Lions, but you don't have to be flashy to go out there and win. You don't have to be flashy to go out there and make the playoffs, and we saw that this year. Every single game, you don't want Justin Herbert to have over 300 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. The Chargers have been through that, and they lost those games. They haven't had that much playoff success in the past because of that. And speaking of lack of playoff success, Justin Herbert, in today's game, had 4 interceptions. One interception went for a pick 6. Not every interception was on Justin Herbert, but he has to play better in the playoffs. And this loss was not all on Justin Herbert, by the way. Will Dissly dropped a pass. It went for an interception to Derek Stingley Jr. You have to catch the football in those key moments. If I'm going to get on Quentin Johnston in this video like I just did, I have to be fair. Will Dissly, very good receiving tight end in the regular season. In today's matchup against the Texans, that one drop hurt this team a lot because it carried over the momentum for the Houston Texans, and their defense kept them in this game for the first 3 quarters. But Justin Herbert does have to play better. He missed a lot of key throws in today's matchup to Ladd McConkey, to Will Dissly, and also to Quentin Johnson. And he was trying to force the football to Quentin Johnson on one of those interceptions. You have to slow down and not get frustrated. And that's what happened with Justin Herbert. We saw the same thing happen against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I understand that Jaguars game, that was more so in Brandon Staley than Justin Herbert. But in the second half, he missed a couple of throws. And it made me scratch my head because I look at Justin Herbert. This kid's a top 10 quarterback in this league with that arm power, the ability to move the pocket, and to break away from certain sacks. Just reel it in and be patient and don't force the football deep down the field when you don't have to. But I look at the offense this year, it was a success. Even though they one and done in the NFL playoffs, that's okay. You have your first season underneath Coach Harbaugh, underneath Greg Roman, underneath Jesse Mentor. You had one of the best defenses this season, and your run game was very solid. And speaking of the run game, J.K. Dobbins, I'm so happy for him because J.K. Dobbins has dealt with so many injuries in the past. He has been able to stay healthy with the Baltimore Ravens. And yes, he missed some time this year dealing with a knee injury. But you look at him. He had over 900 rushing yards. He's a very good running back. And Gus Edwards missed portions of this season. He was very good also. Let's not forget the Denver Broncos game. Thursday Night Football. They didn't have J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards makes a big run here. And then he has another big run in the second half. They win the game because of that. Justin Herbert gets them to scoring range. They go out there, they beat the Denver Broncos. That says a lot of good things about the running backs, but it also says another bad thing about this offense. They're relying so much on those big plays from the running backs. They give the running backs a lot of carries in this system, but they're around average in terms of going out there and having that rushing production. The interior of this offensive line, they need to bring in some help here. You need to bring in a wide receiver, yes, but the guard position and the interior line play in general is just not good. More so on the right side of the offensive line than the left side of the offensive line. I look at Joe Alt, I look at Rashawn Slater. That's one of the best tackle duos all season long. But the interior of this offensive line has to be better. I'm not saying go out there and cut these players. The guys you have right now could be solid depth pieces, but you have to bring in some more talent. I don't want to come on here and just say cut the talent because they had 2 bad games in a row. No, these guys could be solid depth pieces. You can keep them around. But go out there in the NFL draft, bring in some more interior offensive linemen. Go through free agency, bring in some interior offensive linemen. Interior offensive linemen, you can find some cheap ones in free agency, and they could come in and they could be decent starters. They don't have to go out there and move guys around like how the Detroit Lions offensive line does. That would be great. That would be awesome. But you just need those guys to go out there, hold their blocks, and let J.K. Dobbins gain some speed. It was many times this year, J.K. Dobbins, when he's running on the inside, he has 2 to 3 rushers in his face. And the same with Gus Edwards. And J.K. Dobbins is a more explosive running back. At least he's able to dance his way out of trouble. Gus Edwards, not so much. And it also hurt them in pass protection today. I look at the right guard. He's getting ran over and over again. They're running those twists. They're running those stunts. Majority of the sacks that Justin Herbert has taken this year have came from stunts because the guard play has been terrible. Joe Alt, you could say that he had some bad moments, but overall, that kid was one of the best tackles in the league this season. And he's just a rookie. This is the worst that he's ever going to be because he's only going to continue to get better if he can stay fully healthy. Let's knock on wood. And Rashawn Slater, we already know what he's about. He's a premier tackle. So the outside of this offensive line is amazing. When you go back and you look at what they did in the first round, they could have went with a superstar wide receiver or they could have went with the offensive lineman. Well, they went with the offensive lineman. They went with Joe Alt. And they got Ladd McConkey in the second round. And Ladd McConkey, he's a superstar. He's the best receiver on the team. So Coach Harbaugh made the right decision. We've seen Justin Herbert in the past have the premier weapons but have no offensive line. They still have offensive line problems, but they're building this offensive line as we speak. And I think long term, they will be okay with Greg Roman. Just bring in the right pieces. And I trust Coach Harbaugh to do this. He's done this before. He's done this at the college level with Michigan. He's done this many years before with the San Francisco 49ers. When they had offensive line problems, they fixed the offensive line within 2 years. He may be able to do it with the Chargers. We'll see. Bring in some more wide receiving help. bring in some offensive line help. And I wouldn't be surprised they moved off of Gus Edwards to bring someone else in. Not a bad running back, but he missed so much time this year, and they had to give J.K. Dobbins 20, 25 carries at a time. You don't want to do that with a running back that has dealt with injuries in the past. You could bring in another running back that'll be cheaper, and he can also match the explosiveness with J.K. Dobbins. But I don't mind Gus Edwards being around as long as he can stay healthy. When I look at the defense is a lot of good things. I know in today's game, Nico Collins went out there and he was giving them a lot of problems. Jesse Mentor is an elite defensive coordinator. I love Greg Roman. I think Greg Roman is a very smart offensive mind. I like Jesse Mentor even more. I think that Jesse Mentor this year was a top 5 defensive coordinator with the adjustments he was able to make. This was a banged up Chargers defense. A lot of the names that we saw this year in the secondary were either rookies or they're a part of the team last year. Or if that wasn't the case, they were a castaway somewhere else. Cam Hart, young player. Christian Fulton was with the Tennessee Titans. He was a castaway player. He wasn't a terrible player with the Tennessee Titans, but he was not a true number 1 cornerback. He comes over to the Los Angeles Chargers. He's their number 1. And you look at the safety position. Down the stretch, they were dealing with so many injuries. This is a defense they love to put 3 safeties on the field, and they were affected by that in today's matchup. Once again, not making excuses. But Elijah Molden, he was out for this game. He hurt his shin. They had to call in Marcus May. Marcus May got injured. Asante Samuel Jr., who was their number 1 cornerback for a couple of years now underneath Brandon Staley, he got injured. He was on IR. And once again, I'm not trying to make those excuses and take anything away from the Houston Texans, because a lot of the mistake that the Chargers made today, it was either on themselves or the Houston Texans, forced them to make those mistakes. But when I look at this secondary, even when they were dealing with all those injuries against the Atlanta Falcons, they had a pick 6 in that game that won them the matchup. They did not score an offensive touchdown all day long. The defense won them the game. Against the Kansas City Chiefs, not once but twice this year, the defense kept them in the game. In one of those matchups earlier in the season, Justin Herbert was dealing with a sprained ankle without your 2 top tackles, and you're competing with the Super Bowl champion. And you almost defeated them in the second game. It comes down to the little things. I know if you're a Chargers fan right now, it sucks to lose in the wild card, and it sucks to lose the way that you did. But I don't think anyone should be fired. Anyone should be cut because of this. Sometimes you go out there and you lose to the better team on the better day. And that's what happened today with the Chargers. I would love to see this team go out there and advance. But you know what? To see them move off of Brandon Staley and be in this situation underneath Coach Harbaugh in one season, it's amazing to see. Let those young cornerbacks still develop, and hopefully they can go out there and re-sign Khalil Mack. I'm not a cap guru, so I don't know how the money will work out with Khalil Mack, but he's still a top edge rusher to have around. I look at Joey Bosa. He had a solid season, but Joey Bosa will never be the player that he once was because of those injuries. Even on the field, he's a solid player, but they take him in the game with Khalil Mack in terms of taking those guys out in a rotation with Thule and Bud Dupree. Those 4 edge rushers are very good. But when I look at Joey Bosa, those first couple of years, he was a premier pass rusher in the AFC. And this is a man that went out there, he just took a pay cut. I would love to see him stick around with the Chargers because they selected him in the first round and he was a beast at The Ohio State University. But I look at him right now. He's kind of a shell of himself, but he's still a very good player to have around. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Denzel Perryman got injured in today's matchup. You can bring in another interior linebacker, but I think Denzel Perryman is solid enough to have around. When you look at the defense for the Chargers, when they're able to put those 3 safeties on the field, they really don't rely that much on their linebackers. They really rely on those safeties to go out there and make those plays. That's why Derwin James has been a very good player this year. If you remember, Derwin James, over the last few years underneath Brandon Staley, they were using him as a cover safety in one-on-one situations with Travis Kelce and one-on-one situations with Darren Waller when he was still with the Las Vegas Raiders. That's not how you use Derwin James on an every single down basis. He's versatile. Yes, he can be a cover safety, but he's more so one of those guys you look at. Put him inside the box. Let him roam around. Let him cover across the middle of the field. Put him on the outside here and there. Blitz him off the edge. He's a versatile player. And we saw his coach do that with him when he was at college. So this was a great coaching job this year by Jesse Mentor. This is really a college defense in the NFL. It's probably why I love Jesse Mentor and his game plan so much, because the college defenses is so many different looks. College defenses, they'll go out there with the 3 safeties. They'll take a linebacker off the field. They'll put an extra defensive lineman inside the box. We've seen Jesse Mitchell do that also. I trusted the defense would be very good moving forward because of how well that secondary played this year, even when they were banged up, and even when they were injured, even when some of the rookies were injured in the secondary. You saw a lot of guys that you may not know of go out there and make a lot of big-time plays this year for Jesse Mitchell and this defense. With all that being said, the Los Angeles Chargers will be fine, and you have to be aggressive in this division. Now look at the Raiders. They have Max Crosby. Then they also went out there and they brought in a very good defensive lineman last offseason in Christian Wilkins. You have to protect your quarterback. You look at the KC Chiefs, they have George Karlaftis, they have Chris Jones. You look at the Denver Broncos, they have Nick Bonito, and they have a very good front seven as a whole and a very good defense. And you beat the Denver Broncos not once, but twice this year. Over the last few years, they have just been a couple plays away from defeating the Kansas City Chiefs. You go out there, you make those moves that you're able to make in free agency and in the offseason, I think the Chargers will be okay long term. But let me know, how do you feel about the Los Angeles Chargers long term with Coach Harbaugh, and do you still have trust in him after this game? And I will touch on this game in general for the Texans. Like I mentioned before with Justin Herbert, he has to be better in the postseason. They're going to have to find a way to go out there and beat press man coverage, even if you bring in another number one wide receiver. Because when I look at Quinn Johnson today, Ladd McConkey was able to go out there. He was able to win his one-on-one opportunities. Quinn Johnson, 5 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards. Even if you are the number 3 wide receiver, you have to win those one-on-one opportunities. Besides Ladd McConkey, they basically got nothing from no one else today. Will Dissly had those 2 catches, 16 receiving yards. That was it. And they brought in DJ Chark, 1 catch for 10 receiving yards. They got bullied today by the secondary and the front 7 of the Houston Texans. Not giving up on Quentin Johnston, but for a first-round pick, you have to step up. And I've seen him step up in the past. But this is his first time going out there and being in the postseason. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, I want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless. Peace.